This is a discouraging follow-up to a couple of videos we did over the past few days about elected Republicans publicly declaring that they will impose conditions on federal assistance to blue states. Unfortunately, we have 3 more to add to the list as of this morning. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, at the rate we're going, I feel like every elected Republican will be singing this particularly sinister song by, I don't know, the end of the month. It's really gross. So I have 3 clips to play, 2 from Fox News, 1 from Newsmax, I believe, and all 3 are different elected Republicans. The number of elected Republicans publicly declaring that they will conditionalize, that they will withhold federal assistance unless blue states politically do what Republicans want is increasing. And it's really gross and spells disaster for this country. So here's the first clip.
$150 billion, the number that you would expect to have to send to California?
Well, look, we just did a passage of $100 billion in aid here. Let's not forget the other side of this equation. There's $36 trillion in debt that every American is paying $100,000 into. We can't just keep running up the government credit card here. And one of the things that I'll push back on is we've got to be able to grow our economy. We do that with tax cuts, but we also have to spend responsibly here. And so just like aid to California, we will certainly help those thousands of homes and families who have been devastated, but we also expect you to change bad behavior. We should look at the same for these blue states who have run away with a broken tax policy. We want to be able to help out our colleagues in New York, California, New Jersey, but we also want those governors need to change their tune now.
Do you see the smile on this loser's face? He is on the biggest news network in the country. Fox News is mainstream news. Smiling as he's talking about extorting Democratic governors to make concessions and changes to their internal tax code, their state's tax code, in exchange for federal disaster relief assistance. Again, just imagine a Democratic president or a Democratic congressman or multiple Democratic legislators threatening to do the same to red states, Texas when its power grid fails, or Florida when they experience a hurricane. Hey, we need you to adopt more pro-environment, pro-green energy provisions. We need you to actually adjust your tax system to be more progressive or progressive rather than regressive. Imagine how this guy, Congressman Nunn, would react. How dare you? How dare you, conditionalize assistance to Americans in Iowa or Florida or Texas? But because these people think liberals, progressives, and people in blue cities and blue states are not just morally inferior, but just classificationally inferior, that they are less American, he feels that he can impose those sorts of demands on blue cities and blue states. And also for him and his party to complain about fiscal irresponsibility. It was his party under Donald Trump which added $8 trillion to the national debt. $8 trillion, the single greatest contribution in a 4-year term. About 30% of the national debt was added under Donald Trump in one term, including a $2 trillion tax cut for the rich. And by the way, the economy is growing now under President Biden better than it ever did under Donald Trump, even before the pandemic. So this guy's a liar. He's a liar, and he's unempathetic, he's cruel, and he's happy about it. Look at his face. That is the look of a man who delights in cruelty and knows that not only will he not suffer political consequences for it, he will be rewarded for it, that Fox viewers will delight in it. And sadly, he's not alone. Here's another Fox clip with another Republican congressman, Ronny Jackson, echoing the same refrain.
Like it's been talked about, it's going to have to be in conjunction with some reforms that California hasn't been willing to make on the way they regulate their water and things of that nature, their forest management, all these other things, the things that led to the fire. We can't just dump money into a broken system, a poorly managed system, which California absolutely is across the board, and it led to a lot of the damage you see here is because they weren't prepared. They wasted their taxpayer dollars on all kinds of crazy woke agenda items that they've had and green energy stuff, and they haven't really focused on what keeps their state safe. And so we're going to have to.
And he's not able to identify a single damn thing. He just defaults to the conservative boogeyman woke. I'm surprised he didn't reference critical race theory, but they've mothballed that one. Oh, it's all that CRT woke DEI nonsense that that California spend all their money on. And imagine, again, just imagine a Democratic congressman or a Democratic president shit-talking red states. California has its issues. Every state does. California has issues which should be scrutinized and criticized, but so do red states. Let's talk about Mississippi. Let's talk about Arkansas. Let's talk about Alabama. Let's talk about Kentucky. Let's talk about the fact that blue states tend to subsidize red states, that blue states tend to pay more in federal taxes to subsidize economically failing red states. Let's talk about the fact that red states tend to be poorer, less educated, less healthy, more crime-ridden. Let's talk about that. Imagine if Joe Biden referred to Alabama, Kentucky, again, Mississippi, Arkansas as shit heaps or shitholes, or showed this sort of disdain that elected Republicans have for blue cities and blue states. Again, this is another asymmetry which drives me nuts and should drive you nuts, and they know it and they delight in it. They know that we have a political climate which permits and incentivizes Republicans to demonize half this country, but would politically punish Democrats responding in kind. Imagine. You can't imagine it because it's never been done. It's just never been done. We don't have prominent Democrats, mocking and disdaining red states the way that elected Republicans do with blue states all the damn time. And again, echoing, we should put conditions on federal assistance. Gross. Here's a Newsmax clip of a third elected Republican, and I believe this is Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin.
While radical climate Democrats control California, they control the White House, do you think that when the disaster aid in the Senate comes through, that Congress will put some kind of limits on it, going, we're not wasting it on your nonsense, California, we're getting it to the people who've been hurt?
We certainly should. I certainly wouldn't vote for anything unless we see dramatic change in how they're going to be handling these things in the future. But again, these fires, the disaster, the catastrophe that these fires were, you can't prevent fires, but you can certainly prevent the catastrophe. It's about preventable. These are decisions Californian Democrats have made.
And he doesn't point to a single one. He just says, yeah, fires can't be prevented, but catastrophe. Again, there's going to be an after-action report on this. There should be a deep forensic investigation. Perhaps that's true. But what are they, Ron Johnson? What exactly can Democrats do to stop wind, to stop the Santa Ana winds? What can they do about climate change, especially when your party does everything in its considerable power to obstruct efforts to do so? And again, once the after-action report and investigations take place, maybe there are concrete, specific steps that must be taken. I'm all for that. But that investigation hasn't been done yet, number one. And number two, again, imagine that you had a Democratic congressman say the same thing those years that Texas's power grid failed during its freeze, during its winter snaps. Again, like when Ted Cruz fled the country to go to Cancun. Perhaps in addition to mocking Ted Cruz, we should have said things like, you know what? Can't really help you. Can't really help you, Texas. You got to vote these Republicans out. You've got to make some really progressive liberal changes to your shitty conservative policy, and maybe we can avoid situations like this. Imagine what the response would have been. Again, you can't imagine it because elected Democrats are morally superior to elected Republicans, and they never say shit like that. But imagine that they did. What the backlash would be, how upset Texans would rightly be, even conservative Texans who voted for Greg Abbott and Donald Trump, how they'd feel like, holy, really? You're going to extort us at a time of sheer crisis when lives are on the line? You're going to threaten to conditionalize aid? Imagine how the mainstream media, CNN, CBS, ABC, even MSNBC, how they would react to that. But there's a reason that every day another elected Republican comes out and says this shit, because they recognize that we live in a political ecosystem where it is permissible and often rewarded for Republicans to say and do and threaten to do the most unhinged, cruel stuff to liberals, progressives, women, minorities, marginalized groups, people in blue cities and blue states. And they know it's less likely that they will suffer political consequences as a result of it. Friend of the show, Gen Z Democratic Congressman Maxwell Frost responded to some of these saying, this is disgraceful. Disaster aid should never come with strings attached. 0 strings every damn time, no matter where they live. Maxwell Frost, by the way, putting his money where his mouth is because he represents a district in Florida. He's a Democrat, a Gen Z Democrat representing a district in Ruby Red, Florida. And even he's saying, hey, listen, this wasn't done to us. It shouldn't matter if it's Florida, New York, California, Iowa. It shouldn't matter. No conditions to disaster relief. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy saying something very similar. Come on, we aren't idiots. Republicans never ask for strings attached to disaster funding for Republican states. This isn't about helping California. This is about punishing California because it votes for Democrats. And he's right. It's exactly what this is about. And this should be the biggest damn news in the country alongside actual news about the wildfire in California. This should be part and parcel. We should be discussing not just the damage done. Again, hundreds of thousands of people evacuated, 24 deaths, I believe, by the most recent count, tens of billions of dollars in property damage. And all of this is being weaponized and politicized by Republicans to punish voters in California. Hey, we're not going to help you unless you vote for Republicans, or unless you vote for Republican policy. It's an indictment of our nation that even the outrage at this is not at the appropriate level. I think for a lot of people, they'll go, oh gosh, I can't believe Republicans are doing that. Oh, well, both sides. No. This is unique and cruel and uniquely Republican. So yesterday it was 3 people. Today it's 3 people. There's no telling how many more elected Republicans will publicly advocate for this tomorrow. The last thing I'll say is that Politico is reporting that Donald Trump on Sunday talked with House Republicans about trying to tie California wildfire assistance to a debt ceiling increase. Once again, exploiting a Democratic crisis, or a crisis that's occurring in a Democratic state where people need help in order for Republican political advantage. I would not be surprised if they do this, and that's why you have so many elected Republicans coming out and talking about attaching strings. What we might see is Trump and the Republicans saying the only way we're going to help you, the way that you have always helped Republican states, but the only way we will help you is if you give us a debt ceiling increase. Super gross, and he hasn't even been inaugurated yet. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.